early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Now it's time for us to talk about June 12th and the struggle, the lessons for Nigeria. It's been some years after, and we need to also look at the narrative now, years after this election that has been adjudged to be the freest election in Nigeria. Now we're talking about June 12th, election, which that was 1993. It's been adjudged as the freest election Nigeria has ever had. Does it not bother you, Ayo, that since then we've not had something close to that? What do you make of the conduct of election in Nigeria?
So I think we've made a lot of progress from that period up until now. The elections that followed our transition to civilian rule were very riotous, right? And they were disputed severally. But from Obasanjo's second term to Yar'Adua's election to Jonathan's election, and now we have a lot of technological improvements. We're not there yet, don't get me wrong, but I definitely think we've made lots of improvements.
Now I remember, I forgot to ask you where you were in 1993.
I was not born yet.
However, there's something about the Democracy Day that elicits some emotions. It seems like it's only during the fight against the colonial masters and the fight against the military that saw Nigerians so united. I mean, the June 12 elections in 1993, I mean, it was recorded. We saw that protest, saw Nigerians come out en masse to protect the democracy and the mandates they believed in. Beyond that, it seems we have just relaxed and we are now playing that ethnic card that we talked about during the just concluded interview. So that's exactly what saddens me about where we are at the moment.
I agree totally with what Jerry said. Now, the ethnic divide has gotten even deeper compared to what was seen pre-1993 and during 1993, because the victory that Abiola had, MK Abiola had at that time, was a landslide victory, what you can call landslide victory, because where he came from, the region of the country he came from, did not matter at the time. His religion did not matter. What Nigerians wanted at that time was change from the military era. But we've come to see now that, first of all, it's about where you are now, where you're from, what's your religion. Even at that time, it was a Muslim ticket. And we remember that during the election that brought President Tinubu to office, that was an issue because it was a Muslim ticket. So the ethnicity, the division has gotten deeper. And that's because the people have moved away from what the core issue is, which should be about leadership. Who is better to represent us? Who is better to bring to us the change that we seek, more than where does this person hail from? So that has become the issue, and that has become the focus. And to some extent, the political class had actually feasted on that a lot. So until that changes and goes back to, is Femi the right man for the job? Rather than where does Femi come from, for instance. I don't think that we would get to the point that we got to in 1993 where we could say the election is free and fair, because there will be prejudices, and this will give people the foundation for their actions that will be inimical to the common good.
Interesting. You've given me the picture that you actually participated
I can vote for you.
That's right. But let's take the conversation to our guest, and at least Atlanta, we have Paul Ibe now, who is a media consultant and also the spokesperson for Atiku campaign organization. He joins us as part of people who were part of the June 12 struggle and as a patriotic Nigeria to look at what the June 12 struggle stands for. Glad to have you join us, Paul, on NXT this morning.
Yeah, good morning. The pleasure is mine. I'm actually Atiku Abubakar's media advisor and coordinator of his media office. Thank you.
Glad to have you join us. Now, let's look at what June 12 represents for you. What should be the picture of the June 12 struggle compared to what happened in 1993, where we have the freest election? And now looking at the state of the nation, how do we compare what we've done in the past to now, and then what June 12th should stand for and the impact on the nation?
You know, June 12th, is supposed to represent the culmination, for all of our struggles, individually and collectively, for freedom and for liberty, to end the military, draconian, regime, that era. And a lot of sacrifices, were made towards that end. Compatriots like Chief N.K. Abiola and his beloved wife, Ladia Kudirat Abiola, Tafida Shehu Yaradua, a leading politician of that era, Chief Alfred Rwani, among many others, activists, civil society people, students, ordinary citizens, paid, the supreme price. They lost their life, in that struggle. And one will have expected that 25 years down the line, we will have, started to have the benefit, of that struggle. Yes, we need to take cognizance and acknowledge that for 25 unbroken years, we've had civil rule, and but beyond that, we still, suffer massive challenges, especially in the last decade, last 1 year, last 9 years, so to say. We've had unprecedented violence. We've had insecurity, pervasive. Poverty, has been rife. And the material conditions of the average citizen is nothing to, write home about. In fact, it's a reminder of when, the children of Israel left Egypt and they were going to a better place, the promised land. But somewhere along the line, because of what they had to go through, they, some were contemplating going back to Egypt. And that's where we are today. Nigerians have become so, impoverished. I mean, the cost of living, it's something else. And yet, those who preside over our affairs continue to play the ostrich and continue to pretend that all is well. To them, they are creating a scenario that is akin to the 1984 animal farm of Napoleon and his cohorts. There was plenty, only in the books. But in the physical, there is nothing to show for it. That's the reality, that we are in today. And that is what will make people begin to wonder, whether the sacrifices that have been made, lives that have been lost, and all of that is worth it. I want to believe that wherever Chief Nko Abiola is, and I know that he's in a better place, at this particular point in time, I'm sure that he'll be pained. Pained because this, administration of so-called pro-democrats are now in bed, with the military dictators and their agents that ensured that we did not have the benefit of the June 12th election. And that is sad. And that is very sad.
What's your take on the move of Democracy Day from May 29 to June 12? Does it make Nigeria value democracy more given the sacrifice that was paid for this democracy that we currently enjoy by the likes of M.K. Abiola?
Sorry, come again. I didn't get that. Could you? Yes.
I'm not sure you got my question.
Again?
Okay, the question is this. Now, before 2018, Democracy Day was May 29, and that was the day that government, a current government, would hand over to the incoming. Now, it was moved to June 12 in 2018 by former President Muhammadu Buhari. What's your take on the shift in date for Democracy Day? Does it make Nigerians value more democracy now that it's been celebrated on June 12, given the sacrifices of people like MK Abiola for this democracy?
You know, the problem that we have, you know, with our leadership is that they focus on trivia. You know, it matters less if the June 12th is commemorated on May 29 or June 12th or January 1 and all of that. You see, that is symbolic. What is important is that Nigerians, by the actions and inactions of their leaders, by their policies, they must be able to feel the benefit, feel the impact of this long-drawn struggle for democracy, being able to determine, have a say, in their affairs, being consulted about the things that are being done for them. And, the date is a symbolism. It's not important. I mean, that is not too important. What is important is the substance, the principle. What does it represent? In our daily lives, in what our leaders do they reflect this? No, they don't. Because, I mean, it is curious and it's ironic that here we have a leadership and a president who was supposed to have been in that struggle. And now we have a resort to the military dictatorship, the jackboot era of the military dictatorship. Look at what is happening to the media. The cybersecurity law is now being used to hound journalists to the extent that the Nigerian Guild of Editors recently had to raise an alarm. Too many Nigerian journalists, especially the ones that are trying to hold government accountable, doing investigative stuff. And instead of government to take a cue from the work that they have done and, further investigate, those things, they begin to hound them. Fisayo Soyombo, Ojuku, FIJ, journalists, and all of that on a daily basis. And so you begin to ask yourself, what manner of Democrats, are there who do not have any respect for the constitutionally provided, rights of journalists to be able to hold, leaders accountable? And so those are the things that you begin to want. Like I said, it's not about which day, of the week or of the month or of the year, that you celebrate, Democracy Day. It should be something that should be reflected in the day-to-day, affairs of our leaders and in our nation.
Thank you, Paul, for those profound comments. I would like to loop on your answer to say that, do you think that 25 years after, the growth of our national institutions have matched the political growth that we expect of our leaders? Because you just gave instances where journalists were arrested for doing their job by the police, despite the fact that President Bola Tinubu has repeatedly committed himself openly, to free speech, free expression. He reiterated it in his speech today that nobody will be criminalized for expressing opposing views. So this continuous arrest and harassment that journalists continue to face, do you think it speaks more to institutional and systemic issues rather than just, heaping all the blame on political leaders?
Listen, the benefit of the democratic dispensation is supposed to include, but not limited, to the, the empowerment, to the growth of our institutions. But what we've had is the reverse. And what we are now having is, state capture of institutions, even the judiciary, the electoral, commission. We saw what happened. I mean, those who are on the other side may say, no, all went well with the election, but all didn't go well. Because the election was held in, contravention of electoral laws and even the guidelines of the commission itself. After over 300 billion, naira was spent, what we had was a sham. And, elections are supposed to validate, the democratic, process. Election are supposed to do that. And if you don't get it right, with your elections, every other thing, will be a sham. And so that was wrong. The election was, the international community and people locally and, and overseas acknowledged that election did not meet the minimum, the most basic requirements for an election. Look at the media, look at the press, the clampdown. It's one thing for the president to swear. He needs to match his words with action and not just say that. On a daily basis, even as he's saying it, journalists are still being, abducted, not even arrested. It's like an abduction. You take somebody, away from his family in the middle of the night in Lagos and fly the person to Abuja. These are classical military dictatorship, tactics. Look at the economy, for example. They seem to have little or no idea about how to progress. Inflation rate is at 33.7. But Professor Stephen Hankin, an American, economist, reviewing our inflation rate, says that it is sexed up. It's actually about 97. It's a crippling 97%. And because this administration does not want to be held accountable, that is the reason why they will clamp down on journalists. Look at what happened with the report of the Minister of Finance, who did, in the ASAP that it was, forwarding to the president, did, state clearly that, last year they paid 3.6 trillion naira for subsidy, and this year they are projected to spend 5.4 trillion. Why this is worrisome is that, this administration has said that it's done away with subsidy.
It's a dire economic challenge that the country must come together to achieve. If you go back in time, 25 years ago, most of what Abiola campaigned with is some of the challenges we are still facing at the time. So how do you think political parties moving forward, because you just mentioned electoral integrity, and it's very important, of course, to choose those leaders that will take us to, quote and unquote, the promised land, as it's often said, the Nigeria of our dream. However, how can political parties also consolidate this effort and, speak truth to power?
Well, from what is playing out, there is a scenario, that there is a recourse, to a one-party state. Everything that is being done, the body language, and so this is where the opposition parties, come in. They have been failing in their responsibility. Anything that we have done, even the battle against the military dictator, the military era, was as a result of alliances and coalition between the media, the political leaders of that era, citizens, civil society, and all of that. Market women, people join forces together. And that is why it has become important, for the opposition parties to recognize that they have more than a passing interest, in our affairs at this point in time. They need to recognize that the power of their coming together will be able to check the excesses of this administration, and they'll be in a better position to be able to to oust them in the next election. So the opposition parties, the PDP, Labour Party, NMPC, NMPC, whatever opposition, what of they need to come together. It is important. Otherwise, it is to your terms, O Israel. This situation of citizens paying 114% more for a bag of rice, will continue paying 107 more for a bag of flour and 50% more, in transport fares relative to May 2023. It's going to continue, and nothing will change. So the opposition parties need to come together.
Now let's bring in Debo Adeniran, who joins us also virtually. Debo is the Executive Director of the Center for Anti-Corruption and Open Leadership. Debo, glad to have you join us on this special.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, quickly, let's look at the struggle for, for June 12th, what happened at that period, which you are also part of the struggle as human rights activists and also part of the arrowheads of some of the movements that happened during that time. Now, what are the lessons for Nigeria as a nation to learn from the conduct of that election and the aftermath that happened as a result of the June 12th struggle? What are the lessons for Nigeria as a nation?
Thank you very much. The first lesson is that the Nigerian people, and indeed the masses, are very aware of what is good for the polity and what they actually meant. And that is why they rose up in unison to demand for validation of the outcome of June 12th election. Another lesson is that whatever is constructed on a platform with false bottom is likely to collapse, no matter how powerful, no matter how crafty the builder of such structures claim to be. That was what happened to Babangida and his cohorts, who attempted to truncate the germination and blossoming of full-fledged democracy in Nigeria. They tried and tried and tried, transfer power from one second to Abacha to Abdul Salami. They couldn't sustain the stranglehold on the democracy, because the people, when the people is united, they cannot be defeated. Another lesson is that people are the object and subject of any democracy. That was why the administration of Shehu Shagari, who came in after the military administration of the former president Olusegun Obasanjo, collapsed because they were reckless in spending. They were also profligate, and they about it. The people rejected them. That was what led to the incursion of the military, and it's a warning signal to any civilian administration that comes in not to take the people for granted. Of course, we know what is happening in a couple of countries in West Africa where the military has shot their way back to power. That we don't pray for it in Nigeria. And that is why any administration no matter how acceptable such an administration is when it ascends power. We should be cautious that if he pushes the people to the wall, they will strike back, and they may not have the capacity or muster enough capacity to stage a revolution. But then there are some other goons that are waiting in the wings that can strike at the time they least expected. And we also have to learn that no matter how hard people try, those who left their footprints in the sand of time, right side of history, will always be remembered, no matter how long it is. That was what is happening to Basharun, MKO, Abiola now, because everybody knew that what happened to him that led to his untimely death was not natural, and that the contribution.
Let's take a look at the role of the people. I like the fact that in the course of your submission, you've taken the conversation to the doorstep of the people. Now, you said the ruling class should know that the people cannot be taken for granted. In this act of the people being taken for granted, in your assessment, what has been the role of the people towards this? Have they been complicit in this? Is there a way the people have played a role in the challenges that democracy in Nigeria has suffered 25 years after? And what can be done differently going forward?
Well, what we can
Oh, there's been a connection glitch there. We do hope that we will have Debo back very soon. But before we get back to him, I'm not very sure if Paul Ibe is still with us. But Paul, if you're there, let's talk about the role of the people here. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Yes, thanks for having me.
All right. So Debo was talking earlier about the ruling class not taking the people for granted. So I'm asking now, in that kind of situation where it happens as though the people are being taken for granted, what has been the role of the people in that? Have they been complicit? And if they have been, what can be done differently to change the narrative so that democracy in Nigeria thrives and the people actually enjoys the dividends?
Well, even as the leadership, administrations, such as this, want to take citizens for granted. Citizens need to be very deliberate. Citizens must never take themselves, for granted. Citizens need to be involved, in the process, so that at the end of the day, you wouldn't need to complain, because some of the citizens, enabled the situation that we had, what we have today. They knew, because they were told, that this administration, was a merchant of death, of poverty, and all of that. They were clearly told what they are going to expect, but they opted, they chose to, to go the way that they did. And for every action, that we take as citizens, it has consequences. Electoral actions have consequences on governance. And so they need to be involved, very involved. They must not sell their birthright for mere porridge. And people will collect as little as 500 naira then, to cast, their ballot, for candidates they know clearly, offers little or nothing to them. And so it is important, have they learned any lessons from what is going on now? I don't know. It will be difficult, to fathom, because we had 8 breakthrough years of the Muhammad Buhari administration. It was terrible, unprecedented. And we thought that we had seen it all. And yet, people, leaders, enabled the situation that we are in today. And so what we are having now is Tinubu is actually Buhari Pro Max. Is an extension, of that. And so citizens also, bear responsibility, for what has happened. Because where some of them will say, no, we didn't cast our ballot for them. So, but what did you do? Did you protect? Did you protest? So you don't fold your hands. You don't accept the situation and said, okay. And so that is it. Because your actions are all your inactions will have consequences on your life. It will have consequences on security, on your welfare, on inflation, on the economy, socio-political, atmosphere, and and all of that. So citizens need to be engaged. They need to be involved. They should not mortgage, their destiny, for mere porridge.
Profound comments there, Mr. Paul, and thank you for that. I might as well say that citizens' engagement has been on the increase in the past few years as far as Nigeria's electoral landscape is concerned. And we should also, always remember that the votes cast in the last election, the total for opposition is much more greater than what brought in the current sitting president. Having said that, our guest, Debo Adeniran, is back with us, and I would just like to continue the conversation from where we stopped earlier. Mr. Debo, if you're with us, my colleague was asking what you think the role of the people are in ensuring that our democratic process become more robust, more civil, and more engaging for everyone.
I actually, and I wonder what happened to your network down there. I was saying that both of us in the media and in the civil society have to be vigilant. The people have to organize themselves, into groups that will also be vigilant. We are the security, guards for our own democracy. We should not allow anything to happen to it, given the background of what has happened in the past. Because when you look at June 12th was actually not what many people are describing it as. June 12th was a kind of bastardization of what should be democracy. Because the flurry of events that happened before, during, and after that election was anything but democratic. You remember that people were banned. Those who wanted to contest the election were banned. Those organizations and associations that wanted to transmute to political parties were also banned. And against the democratic norm, it was government who created two political parties, the National Republican Convention, NRC, and the Social Democratic Party, for the people, against the rule of democratic norm. Then on the day of election, the open system was also not democratic because it doesn't guarantee our right to privacy. And afterwards, the announcement of the election result was stopped abruptly, even when everybody already had the complete election result in their hands, only for the then NEC chairman, Professor Humphrey Nwosu, to announce the final results. That the military stopped him, and they waited more than 10 days before they came back in the air and in the media to tell us that the election had been annulled and no good reason was given. Now, the people, even when they didn't agree with the process that led to asking for the validation of that election. That is the power of the people. That was because they were vigilant. That was because of safeguard their own interest and the interest of their progeny. But then what we need to do is to look back at where we are coming from. What was the magic that brought all the people together? What was the power that actually made it possible for the military with their guns and their tank and their bayonet to step aside for the, in order to escape the wrath of the people. Why is it that Shonekon's government, interim national government with which Babangida replaced himself when he supposedly stepped aside, was declared illegal? Because we went to court and we had a confident, a kind of bold and courageous judge in late Justice Dolapo Akinsanya, who declared that interim national government was illegal. It was something that Abacha rode on his back to power. Now, the people didn't give Abacha any opportunity to rest in power. Of course, he ruled with a jackboot, the military jackboot, and he actually did wreak a lot of havoc on the people. But the people remained undeterred, despite the killings, despite the disappearances, despite the loss of limbs and lives. One that brought the people together was the capacity of the Western world to penetrate the fortress that we try to build and destroy, the wall that we build around our democracy. They don't want us to compete with them. They have mortgaged the mind of several of our leaders. They have also used their own tricks to get into the minds of our children and our youth who should ordinarily wish to safeguard their future. But what they have is to push several movies, videos, and the rest of them into our intellectual spaces. And to fight for it. In fact, they don't even know that they have a brighter future. They don't want to care about it. That is why they could not aggregate their opinion to fight for their future. You know what happened during the NSAS? It was a spontaneous thing, just because they have common interest. And that interest is to get the SARS out of the way. And I make bold to say that.
Thank you very much, Debo Adeniran, for being a part of the special June 12 edition of Early Exchange. Yes, while the people need to ensure that the dividends of democracy are gotten, it must be done in a peaceful manner, else it will just degenerate to a more chaotic situation. We thank you also very much, Paul Ibe, for your time with us on this special edition. We do not take for granted the time that you have made out to be part of the show today. Thank you. And I want to say happy Democracy Day to you, gentlemen. It is our hope that the Nigeria that we all dream of will someday very soon become a reality.
Well, the essence of having this conversation, it's our obligation to shape policy and advance development with our conversation. So we're hoping that with the narratives that some of our guests have put on the table, this present administration could build on this, because the essence of June 12 is to show Nigeria that we can be united. We can have the freest election ever, and we can have the dreams of the founding fathers come into reality. And I hope the present administration could build on that. And Nigeria should also be hopeful that Nigeria will be a better place. That I know for sure, that Nigeria will get better.
Of course.
All right, so Joy, looking beautiful like this, where do you need to be? Because Femi asked, where were you in 1993? So at this time, 2024, June 12, 2024, where do you need to be after the show with this wonderful dress?
Well, I'm hoping that SOUQ News would organize a dinner that will be worthy of this dress that I brought my Christmas clothes, of course. But talking about our democracy, our young people have to be more serious about joining political parties. I mean, the narrative that it's for the older people and we are used for campaigns should, at this moment, stop. I mean, if you look at, in retrospect, in 1993, there were very young people who were part of it. Look at Professor Patutomi, for instance, who's talking as if it was just yesterday he went to vote. You know, it's interesting to know that young people were actively involved in political parties, in governance, and in fighting for what they think was best for their nation. So I will urge that moving forward from this Democracy Day celebration, young people will do more in participating in governance, in holding government accountable. It's in their hands, really.
And of course, the press does have its role to play in that. Don't you agree, Ayola?
Yes, absolutely. I think the press is doing a great job, but there is more to be done. We have very vibrant newspapers, both print, online, and of course, we have SOUQ Television, that continues to interrogate policies and proposals by government agencies. But of course, the press, has an integral part to play, in broadening our democratic space and, improving the efficiency of our elections. And I think that's what we'll continue to do, right?
Yes, that's what we'll continue to do here at SOUQ News TV, shape policy that brings about development, just for Nigeria, for Africa, and by extension, the world. Yes, this has been a special edition where Abuja converged with Lagos. Yes, I'm talking about SOUQ News Abuja converging with SOUQ News Lagos to bring to you this special edition. It took me a while before I get my colleagues around me like this again. It's been a wonderful one, but it was worth it, and I'm sure you've enjoyed the show. In case you missed any part of it, you can go over again and just watch it all over from the beginning on YouTube. Follow social media platform is at SOUQ News, and there you get all the wonderful programs. I always ask you to stay with SOUQ News, but on this special day, I'll add more to it. Let's play a role to ensure that the Nigeria that we all dream of is the one that we get to see 25 years from now. What will be the story? It is left for you and I to shape it and tell it. I'm Blessing Eichie. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, and from me to you, let's ensure that the dreams of our founding fathers come to reality. And what we need to do is to ensure that we are patriotic. We commit our dedication to our nations to ensure that Nigeria becomes better. Just like earlier explained, we'll get better and return tomorrow. I am Femi Ayodele. Thanks for watching.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.